So I just had a frank and constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. I told him that I will always ensure that Israel is able to defend itself. I also expressed with the Prime Minister my serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Gaza, including the death of far too many innocent civilians. So I just had a frank and constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. I told him that I will always ensure that Israel is able to defend itself, including from Iran and Iran-backed militias such as Hamas and Hezbollah. From when I was a young girl collecting funds to plant trees for Israel, to my time in the United States Senate and now at the White House, I have had an unwavering commitment to the existence of the State of Israel, to its security, and to the people of Israel. I've said it many times, but it bears repeating. Israel has a right to defend itself, and how it does so matters. Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization. On October 7, Hamas triggered this war when it massacred 1,200 innocent people, including 44 Americans. Hamas has committed horrific acts of sexual violence and took 250 hostages. There are American citizens who remain captive in Gaza. Sagi Deko Hen, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, Idan Alexander, Keith Siegel, Omer Nutra, and the remains of American citizens Judy Weinstein, Gad Haggai, and Itai Hen are still being held in Gaza. I also expressed with the Prime Minister my serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Gaza, including the death of far too many innocent civilians. And I made clear my serious concern about the dire humanitarian situation there, with over 2 million people facing high levels of food insecurity, and 500,000 people facing catastrophic levels of acute food insecurity. What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent. Let's get the deal done so we can get a ceasefire to end the war. Let's bring the hostages home, and let's provide much-needed relief to the Palestinian people. And ultimately, I remain committed to a path forward that can lead to a two-state solution. Let us all condemn terrorism and violence. Let us all do what we can to prevent the suffering of innocent civilians, and let us condemn anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate of any kind. And let us work to unite our country. I thank you.
Madam Vice President, after your meeting, are you...
Good afternoon, everybody. There's a lot on the agenda, but first and foremost, we'll be discussing how deeply and how strongly the President feels, we feel, that we've got to get this hostage deal in place so we can get a ceasefire also in place, at least for phase one, for that those first 6 weeks. There are gaps that remain, and our team continues to work with our counterparts in the region to see if we can't close those gaps. We believe that they are of a nature where they can be closed and that we can achieve a deal. But it's going to require, as it always does, some leadership, some compromise, and an effort to get there. The President will be reaffirming for Prime Minister Netanyahu that he believes we need to get there and that we need to get there soon. Yes, yes, and yes. He has said so publicly himself, Zeke. He wants to get the hostages home. The Israelis, the government, Prime Minister Netanyahu, has been working with us to try to get that deal over the finish line. That said, as I mentioned at the top, there's still some gaps that remain, and we're going to be talking to the Prime Minister today about closing those gaps. And we need to bring the war to an end. And one of the principal things that the President's going to talk to the Prime Minister about today is how we get there. How do we end this war? And the best way, in his view, is to get this deal in place. Get a 6-week ceasefire. Get phase 1 going so you negotiate to phase 2. Get a cessation of hostilities, and more critically, get those hostages home.
You condemn what you saw yesterday. How do you characterize